first SCUMBOB episode on the list? Yes, it did. That's right, guys, this is a dreaded SCUMBOB episode. SCUMBOB party. I'm sorry, guys, it's a SCUMBOB episode. There is a lot wrong here, starting with the initial premise. The idea of him, and Sandy's just getting payback for his sexist comment. It's actually quite funny because, yeah, SpongeBob made a sexist comment and Sandy called him out for it. Good going, Sandy. So, is this episode spongy or scummier than the underside of a snail? I hate to say it, but it's a SCUMBOB episode. Yeah, I'm sure I'm gonna get some is the opening shots of Squidward, SpongeBob, Patrick sleeping. It's really nicely edited and is a nice way to start off the episode. Unfortunately, everything else is downhill from there. This is a SCUMBOB episode through and through. He's lost his ability to laugh. That's a pretty good plot. It's not bad and could have made for a good episode. Really pushed me over the edge from meh right into SCUMBOB territory is SpongeBob's infernal laughter. They make it even more annoying in this episode by adding a squeaky toy effect to it, and it plays constantly in really stupid. So yes, it is a SCUMBOB episode. Forwarded in every possible way, this episode is terrible. It is clearly a SCUMBOB. This episode is terrible. It is clearly a SCUMBOB episode. The only thing I like about it are the boys who use spatulas and even hydrodynamic. But yes, this is a SCUMBOB episode. Why to throw in a little fan service for continuity? They screw it up. This episode is certainly a SCUMBOB episode. Silly, but everyone in this episode just outright attacks SpongeBob. So I'm gonna go ahead and call this one a SCUMBOB episode. It's gonna get to be happy. Yeah, it's a SCUMBOB. It just is really out of place. So, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and call this episode a SCUMBOB one. A lot of the same music is in Dunces and Dragons, and that is a much better episode. So I guess you could say that the title is quite fitting. Yeah, it's a SCUMBOB episode. Because there really isn't anything I like about this episode. And in fact, it represents. I like the reveal of the moth being tiny. He's played by Mark Hamill, so of course it's pretty great. And Birdman and Barnacle Boy get in a few one-liners, but other than that, it's completely pointless. And as far as the first half of this episode, it's way worse. I mean, the second half is meh, but the first half is. The episode just goes right downhill, only to come back up a little bit when Birdman and Barnacle Boy show up. If you haven't already guessed, it's a SCUMBOB. The fact that the alarm goes on throughout the entire thing, like a constant ringing in your ears of how stupid this all is. It just really pushes an already tedious 4 minutes right into the depths of SCUMBOB. The only thing I kinda like is SpongeBob, of course. That's the highlight, the fact that something didn't happen. That's pretty bad. Do I even need to say it's a SCUMBOB? The entire episode is an appropriate episode to be called a SCUMBOB episode. Laugh out of me. But everything else is wrong on a lot of different levels and really bad. The episode is definitely a SCUMBOB, and if you want to see a much better, it just kind of feels cheap. It's certainly not the worst episode, but just everything here feels wrong. And for that, it's a SCUMBOB episode. Oh, a lot of things wrong with this episode. I hate it, and it is definitely a SCUMBOB episode. Also, at one point, his apology seems really forced, and this is after chasing the man out of a party dedicated to him. Before I go on any longer talking about all of this episode's many flaws, I will call it right now a SCUMBOB episode. This episode had a SCUMBOB episode. And no, Patrick, there is no such thing as vampire. I think it's clear that it is a SCUMBOB. It's a SCUMBOB episode. I kinda like the joke about how Patrick is paying for it, even though it's really not sound good. It's probably far from the worst SpongeBob special, but it is a SCUMBOB episode in Cope City. Just make another character model, guys. This one's another SCUMBOB, although like Patrick's least favorite episode, because this was the episode that was so bad, so much a SCUMBOB episode, and that song will meh, but ultimately, it's a SCUMBOB episode. Much of a fool he's making himself look like. Overall, there's a lot of problems, and this episode isn't memorable in the least. So, I'm gonna call it a SCUMBOB episode. Episode 102 concept isn't even original to SpongeBob anyway, so there isn't really many positives in the episode at all. It's a SCUMBOB episode, and episode 105B, fine. Episode 105A. Winter in it would still be a SCUMBOB episode. Here's Episode back in season 5. I think that the slide whistle jokes are unusual and interesting, and to have a whole short based around them would have been clever. But this goes on for way too long. It's a SCUMBOB episode. A SCUMBOB episode. Also, in this episode, Squidward believes pretty much the entirety of the episode. You can get away with plots that simple if the thing is going to be funny, but this isn't funny. It's clearly a SCUMBOB episode. It's definitely a big-lipped alligator moment. But more than that, this episode is a SCUMBOB episode. Krabs suddenly starts counterfeiting money. Like, I don't get it. They make Mr. Krabs awful the entire episode. He gets his comeuppance, but no, he definitely has to be happy in the end. And for an episode so keen about dropping morals of telling lies, it doesn't seem to mention anything about how counterfeiting is wrong. I have to give it a SCUMBOB. And not only is it predictable, a SCUMBOB, it's definitely on the cusp of being. There isn't really much time or effort put into it. It's a SCUMBOB episode. It's on 12B. Choir Boys. SpongeBob follows Squidward to choir practice. SCUMBOB. A simple solution that none of the characters ever think of. Needless to say, it's a SCUMBOB episode from all sides. It's clearly not what they were going for. This thing was actually nominated for an Emmy, and it didn't win. For is a SCUMBOB. Most of the jokes aren't funny. The plot is real. As I mentioned, it happens in Choir Boys. It's a SCUMBOB episode, and I guess I give the episode credit for not treating SpongeBob like the hero of the story, but even still, it's clearly a SCUMBOB. And you have to love the fact that Squidward, two-headed annoying entity, it's a SCUMBOB, and it really ticks of this episode until the very end. Why does he have to profit from this? It's easily a SCUMBOB. You know, an episode. I also had a hard time deciding whether it would be meh or SCUMBOB. It was a close one, but I decided that it's just barely a SCUMBOB episode. I don't hate it. They're never in any danger, and nothing is funny. It's a SCUMBOB. Characters getting locked over again in the next scene. The payment scene means literally nothing if you're not going to show SpongeBob retaining the damage from it. It's not like SpongeBob's bank account. We see him bargaining with Mr. Krabs for working for you can't even show it. This episode is just light on everything. It's a light SCUMBOB. More commercial breaks and more money from you. I know I say this a lot, but I really don't ever want to see these segments ever again. Obviously, they're SCUMBOB segments. It's a SCUMBOB episode, and a really, consider it in the context of an anniversary special, it's not so rare. At the end, the characters randomly turn SpongeBob BC on us. It is a SCUMBOB. The concept's funny the first second. Holding on it isn't gonna make it any funnier. It's a SCUMBOB episode. Knows what the statistics have to say. This season is a clear-cut SCUMBOB season.